Hi, I'm Olivia.
And I'm Amy.
And this is a Girls in Marketing podcast. Every week, we release a new episode that you won't want to miss. Our guests are industry experts with amazing experiences, so you'll always come away with new nuggets of wisdom. From educational and inspiring episodes covering the latest in digital marketing to casual and fun chats with the Girls in Marketing team, unpacking marketing myths and trends, we've got it all.
Here at Girls in Marketing, we're all about empowering and supporting women to be the best marketers they can be through our online learning platform and community. Check out our resources and membership to get involved, as we'd love to welcome you to our inner circle.
Right, let's dive into an episode together.
Hello and welcome back to the Girls in Marketing podcast. Today I'm joined by Rosa Mitchell from connective3, and we're going to be talking about a whole host of different things, from Rosa's experience getting to the industry of digital PR and how to overcome barriers in your career journey, whether it's relating to resilience, confidence, finding a job, managing your confidence on a day-to-day level, and you'll learn some really useful tips and tricks to take away to help you build up your confidence too. So first of all, I always like to start by asking our guests kind of how they got into the marketing industry and what their journeys really looked like. So I know that you started off by studying journalism at university. So really interested kind of to know why you chose to study journalism and how that's translated and kind of projected you into a career in what you're in now in sort of digital PR.
Yeah, well, I think like most 17-year-olds, I had absolutely no idea what to do with my life. I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. And journalism always seemed like a little bit glamorous based on like the films and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I could do that. I can write. I could be a journalist. Not realizing that the industry was print journalism, especially, was kind of like dying a death at that time.
Yeah.
I know. So I also thought I had like ideas in my head that, you know, I'd be able to change the world with journalism and get into like political journalism or crime journalism, and had all these different kinds of ideas about what it could be like. And I did the course. I did it at Leeds Met, which is now Leeds Beckett, which was great. I really enjoyed it. But I probably realised maybe it wasn't quite what I wanted to do. And my path into marketing was really varied. Like, it was not a straight, clear path at all.
Yeah.
Throughout university, I worked at a call centre in a bank. So I did like collections where I'd phone people up and ask them for money. So I know it was not
glamorous.
Yeah. It was not like the films that I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But through that, I gained a lot of like financial knowledge and skills in terms of finance. So I, after university, went into a role in a debt management company. Again, call centre work, but not collections, like a little bit different. From there, I went into insurance underwriting. So completely different from marketing.
Oh, wow.
And throughout this whole time, I was looking for jobs in the industry. Like I was applying for so many different types of jobs per day. I started a blog, which I'm not going to say the name of in case anyone tries to look for it.
Keep that one buried.
Yeah. I was looking for people in the industry, seeing if I could kind of like have lunch with them, have coffee with them, speak to them. And for about 2 years, I just got absolutely nothing. I was lucky enough to have that finance background, so I could get an all right job, just not doing what I wanted to do. And then I got I don't want to say a lucky break because I did work hard for it, but then I applied for a content marketing exec job in a sales and investment company.
Right.
So my background in finance combined with the university course and the kind of work that I've been doing outside led me into that path. And that's how I broke into marketing, really.
Amazing. I find it so interesting hearing about people's journeys, and that's why I generally do like to start off with a bit of a background question, because everybody's journeys, I think particularly into marketing as an industry, are so varied. Like no one really does look the same. And even when people do go to university and they actually study marketing as a degree, as a discipline, even then it's not always as straightforward as they come out and get straight into marketing. So it's interesting actually that your background was in kind of the finance side of things, and that was how you got into it, through combining that background and your love for marketing and kind of what you were doing on the side and all that sort of stuff. But it's really inspiring as well. And I think that something that I think a lot of our listeners will take from that is that you kind of, it did take a lot of, persistence from your side of, doing a lot of applications, putting the effort into starting your own blog, making your own kind of opportunities and things, because sometimes it really does take that, doesn't it?
It really does. And it was such a disheartening period of time as well. I thought I was going to be working in these jobs that I really didn't like forever. And I thought everything that I was doing was just futile. But it really wasn't. It was leading me to where I needed to be. And I think looking back in hindsight as well, I didn't quite realise the skills I was developing in those jobs and how much they were going to help me in future.
Yeah.
Specifically thinking about working in the call center, it was really difficult and I had to have really difficult conversations with people. But I think one of my biggest skills now is being able to speak to people about difficult issues, especially in terms of management, and speaking to people on a one-on-one level and explaining difficult concepts in a simple way. And I think I got the basis of those skills from working in a call center, like 100%. I don't think I would have been the marketer and in the position that I'm in today if I didn't work a number of different jobs where the soft skills that you develop are kind of different to what I would have done straight away in a marketing role. Because I went into content, so it was very writing heavy straight away. I didn't really have to speak to people or obviously it wasn't management straight away either. So even though it was a really difficult process and I worked a lot of jobs that are, not a lot, I worked 3 jobs that I wasn't in love with and didn't feel like I was working towards what I wanted, looking back, it all added up to where I am now.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, isn't it? Acknowledging that, you know, even though something wasn't your dream job and it was never going to be forever for you, there's so many positives that you can take from it. And, you know, even being able to attribute, you know, some of the ways that you're able to do things now to those experiences is really positive. And I think it's really kind of encouraging for anyone who is in a position where either they're looking to get started in the industry or change careers. We have a lot of people in our Girls in Marketing community who are looking to change their career into marketing from another industry, from another discipline, and knowing that, because they, you know, we get messages all the time, how do I get into marketing when I don't have any experience? And it's that thing of, but you do. Yeah. And no matter what you currently do, there's so much that you can take into a career in marketing. And like what you said about kind of taking complex kind of issues or complex things and being able to really simplify them. In a lot of cases, that's the essence of what marketing really is, isn't it? It's putting difficult and complex ideas and whatever it might be into like layman, understandable, easily digestible terms and stuff. So those are really important skills to develop. Another question that I'm interested to ask is, obviously with the background in sort of digital PR, SEO and stuff like that, have you got any kind of standout brands or campaigns that, you know, looking back, you think, okay, they were some of my favourites that I've worked on or worked with throughout my career?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really lucky, really, really lucky. I've been working in content, SEO, digital PR for about 10 years now. I know what you're thinking. How did I start my career at 12 years old? But you can cut that bit.
No, I like that.
But I've worked with some really, really cool brands. Like the first brand that I worked for that really kind of, I fell in love with marketing and the big digital PR campaigns for was Ann Summers. So when I was in my old agency, we had them as a client and we did a campaign which was called the 30-day sex position challenge. So this
sounds interesting.
It was so much fun. It was some of the funniest days I've had in the office with some fantastic people. Basically, it was Couples Awareness Month was March. We knew from the Ann Summers website that the most visited pages were the sex position pages, so we knew they were of interest to people. And then our goal was to build links towards the sex toys page. So we came up with the 30-day sex position challenge where each day you had to do a different sex position with your partner. And I'm not going to lie, like some of them we just made up. Like some of them have never existed.
And
I don't think anyone has ever done them. But we needed 30. It was really funny in the office, like figuring out what we were going to use for each day.
Oh, wow.
Broke all that down, explains how to do them. And Summers, I don't know if they do it now, used to have those like wooden dolls that they used to put in the positions that the position would be explaining.
Oh, really?
So we had some really nice visuals like based on that. And we put it together in a big blog, outreached it, and it went absolutely everywhere. I think it was the biggest campaign that I've worked on, definitely.
Amazing.
And we won 3 awards for it as well.
Really?
Yeah. I think it won 3 awards for I can't remember the awards, but they were great.
Yeah, good awards.
Yeah.
Whatever the awards.
Some of the good ones.
Awards are awards. Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
I loved working on it. And I think it was it was the biggest campaign I've worked on probably.
Yeah.
But really just really started my love of creativity and those big campaigns and really thinking about things on a lot of different levels. But not every client can be Ann Summers.
Yeah, of course.
I do have clients that are a lot less sexy, I'd say.
Yeah.
And some of them I've worked on my favorite campaigns for. So one of my clients at connective3, they're a finance company, and obviously with my background in finance, I felt like I could bring a lot to them. We did a campaign on hidden debt. So the debt that people hide from their partners or their parents or whoever kind of is in their life. And using kind of survey data, we could find out the average amount of debt that people are not telling other people about. And we use that figurehead to start a conversation around why it's really important to talk about debt and to talk to people if you're struggling about debt. And really started that conversation, which I was really proud of.
Yeah.
Like it was a campaign that's not as fun and it's not as
sexy,
not as out there as Ann Summers, but we took a brand that's a little bit less traditionally. It's not e-commerce and it's a bit more of a difficult brand to do digital PR for.
Yeah.
And did a really brilliant thing, and we do really good stuff with that client still. And that's kind of an example of the two different types of campaigns that you can do in PR, really.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And it's interesting to note that you had favourites kind of both of those types of campaigns, because I think that's another thing, isn't it? That, a lot of people's expectation of going into working in PR is that all of the campaigns you'll work on and the brands that you'll work with will be these big, exciting, household names, sexy brands. But, PR is for all types of companies. It's not just for those big, massive, headline hitting PR campaigns for the e-commerce brands and stuff. But it's good to know that obviously you've worked on some really powerful stuff otherwise.
Yeah, I think you can have more fun and be more creative with brands that aren't as obviously easy to PR.
Yeah.
Like I really do believe that. And I've worked with, one of my favourite campaigns is I worked with lawyers and they did wills as one of the services. And we did a campaign on how much money overall people leave to the pets. It was really fun. It was a really good campaign. You actually can't directly leave money to your pets. You have to leave it in a trust for someone to look after your pets, which is really interesting again.
Right.
But we could break all that down. And that was like a fun, cute campaign where we involved animals in it.
Oh, I love that.
And we did another one where we looked, I love doing Freedom of Information Act campaigns because I feel like I'm really doing hard-hitting work there, like proper original research.
Yeah.
I love it, like emailing out to all the councils, getting everything back. But we did a campaign on how long conveyancing was taken when people are buying a house. And we found for different local authorities, like some were taking 6 months, some were taking 2 weeks. So it was leading to massive delays for people buying houses. Doesn't sound like that interesting, but it was really newsworthy.
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
for people waiting to buy a house. So again, like you have to be that little bit more creative.
Yeah.
But I think that's where the challenge lies in PR, and that's where you can really let your creativity out and think critically about what people are going to want to find interesting about your product or your client's product.
That's the thing, isn't it? And I think sometimes when there is a bit more of a challenge associated with it, because it's not as glaringly obvious as this is their product and people find that interesting anyway, so let's just find a cute and fun angle. It's like, what else relating to this product or service are people interested in? How can we pull a story out of that? How can we weave the brand in? There's a lot more layers to it, isn't there? And getting involved in that background stuff and, like you say, doing the digging and all of that background work, so exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not me as well, making notes about the leaving wills to your pet. I'm like thinking about my cat, like, okay, how do I go about leaving in my money? So interesting, obviously you've worked kind of agency side with a variety of different brands, but a question that we get a lot from marketers, people interested generally in marketing in various areas in PR, etc., is kind of what are the pros, cons of working in-house, agency side? Obviously, I'm not going to say that, obviously you'll have all of the answers, and it's something that I think very much varies from person to person, depending on what you like, the environment that you thrive in, the agency or organisation that you work in-house for. So there's a lot of factors that come into it, but kind of from your experience, what would you say maybe are the biggest differences, challenges, benefits to kind of either or?
Yeah, so I started my career in-house and it was good and I learned a lot, but it was a much slower pace than agency. And I love agency life. I prefer it. Right. Definitely, much prefer it. I think I would recommend anyone who is brand new to the industry to go to agencies first because you learn everything. Like you learn so much and you're surrounded by experts in different areas and you can bounce ideas off them and you can speak to them about different bits. And then there'll also, in bigger agencies, be people there who are at your level as well, and you can support each other that way. I think with in-house, depending on how big the business is, you might potentially be one of the only people doing either content or one of the only people doing PR, the only person doing PPC, and there won't be that big team around you to learn from and grow from. And develop your skills at the very beginning of your career. There'll be like marketing directors and heads of marketing who you'll be able to learn from, but I think it's invaluable as a new starter to be surrounded by that atmosphere and to be able to ask those questions. But yeah, there are pros and cons to both. I know people who've gone agency in-house and much prefer in-house.
Really?
And I love being able to be with a project from start to finish and be fully part of it and see the results and see how it's affecting my team. I guess it is personal preference.
Yeah.
For me, it's agency. I feel like it's much faster pace. You get to work in so many different industries, which I think is really fun. I've learned loads, and it's that team surrounding you. I think that's really important for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say I agree. I think if somebody's maybe not sure, and I think also if somebody's not sure whether they want to be agency or in-house, or they're not sure what area of marketing they want to go into, they'll get a bit more exposure, like you say, potentially going agency side and being able to be surrounded by experts in different areas. But yeah, I've known quite a lot of people who've gone agency and then kind of through working with different brands have said, you know what, actually my preferred industry to work in is this one, so I'm going to go and find a role in-house within that industry. And it's a great way to learn what you like, isn't it? You know, yes, some people, like you say, like to be really immersed in the product, in the brand, and just be able to follow things through from start to finish, you know, and then move on to the next thing and kind of stick with that brand. And it's all personal preference, isn't it? But I definitely think it's interesting, obviously, that you really enjoy sort of the agency side of things. So coming back to speaking of getting into the industry and stuff, so we mentioned a little bit about your journey as a grad, coming into the world of work, navigating, applying for job roles and all of that sort of stuff. Obviously, it was quite an ongoing thing for you whilst working other jobs, and kind of, you know, you had to be very persistent with it. How did you find navigating that and taking, I'm assuming, you know, quite a lot of, you know, either applications that you put in that you didn't hear back from, or maybe like getting to interview stages and not getting the role, maybe not quite having the experience that was desired at that point in your own kind of career journey. How did you navigate going through that and not find yourself just feeling really disheartened by it all?
I think throughout a lot of it, I was disheartened.
Yeah.
I was. And there was a lot of tears, especially final stage interviews where you just mess up and you don't get them and all that kind of stuff. But I knew what I wanted, and I knew if I kept going, I knew I'd get it. Like I did. It's such a difficult position to be in. I don't think anyone really warns people about finishing uni and how hard it is. I feel like you are prepped to kind of like do the job and then walk into a job, but so many people don't walk into the job that they want, and then they're kind of thrown out into the real world. And you have to do your job, and then you're applying for all these different types of jobs as well, and it can really get to you. It can. I think you need to, what's really important is mentors and role models at this point. So if there is someone in the industry who you've seen who've had a similar career path to you, or is in a position where you want to be, I would suggest reaching out to them, speaking to them, ask how they did it, if they have any tips, any advice. And networking is really important. Making yourself, attending events, learning as much as you can, learning about either the area of marketing you want to get into or just about the different agencies, the different areas, and kind of really pushing yourself out there is really important. It can be really disheartening. It can, and I've been there, and I remember how it felt, but you just need to keep pushing and trying lots of different avenues, and understanding that sometimes you're going to have to take side steps. But those side steps, you can develop those skills that you need to get where you need to be eventually.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And it's so useful, I think, having someone who's been in that position share kind of actionable things that people can do and ways that they can continue to kind of not lose hope in that experience. And I do think I totally agree with you about that, you know, building your network, reaching out to people, because, you know, you're not always going to find that you'll reach out to someone and they're going to be helpful, but 9 times out of 10, somebody will look and think, you know what, I was also once in that position and I was doing my best to reach out to people for advice. So I really want to be that person for somebody else as well, whether it's internal to your organisation or it's, you know, from your external network on LinkedIn or from attending events and things. It's definitely a really great way to, you know, build up your confidence and find opportunities and stuff in it. So another thing that me and you have spoken about before is kind of the concept of like a growth mindset, which I think is really, really interesting. And I know that, it's something that kind of you've explored. I thought it'd be interesting to kind of have a bit of a chat with you about what that is, what that means to you, and kind of how you've sort of explored that personally.
Yeah, the growth mindset theory, I think, is something that when I heard about it, I kind of realised how I'd been getting in my own way with where I needed to be. and I learned about it from my mum, who is really interested in sports psychology. She's a PE teacher, and we were talking about sports one day, and she was talking about how the growth mindset has such a big impact on how people behave. And I was like, what is that? Like, what is the growth mindset? So Carol Dweck was an educational psychologist, and she studied the way some children can try something out, bounce back from it, try it again, and keep going with it. And others seem to like really shut down when they fail and like really can't carry on. And there's two different mindsets that people have. There's the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And if you've got a fixed mindset, if you try something and you fail at it, then you think, oh, I can't do this. That's not something that I can do, and I can't carry on with it. With the growth mindset, it's you keep trying until you get it right, and you keep going and you keep going. And when I first kind of learned about that and heard about that, I was like, this is what's been holding me back. This is what's been holding me back from growing my career. This is what's been holding me back from taking risks. I have a fixed mindset, and I'm scared that if I try something and I fail at it, everyone will laugh at me. Like, it'll be a big embarrassment. So it stopped me from even trying. Or if I did try something and it didn't go the exact right way I wanted it to be straight away, I'd never try it again. I'd never give it another go.
Yeah.
So learning about that mindset and how you can change your own mindset made like a big, big difference for me in my career. Trying to apply that day to day, it helped me take more risks. It helped me become much less afraid of failure. And it really just kind of like made me think differently. And I think it's learning about that's one of the reasons that I am where I am today, I think.
Amazing. Yeah, I guess it just makes you approach situations quite differently and look at things in a different way. And the thing that kind of came to mind for me when you were talking about that is, you know, I think that concept of perfectionism and the fixed mindset sounds very much to me like, you know, if you're a perfectionist, you want to get something right straight away or be the best at it. And if you're not, it's kind of like, oh, you know, that's not for me. I'll move on and do something else.
Yeah.
But are you then inhibiting your own growth because, you know, you could be really great at something, it just takes a bit more time. And if you've got that kind of, you know, growth mindset, like you say, to just have the, you know, the persistence to keep going with something, then actually you can do great things.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of kind of anything in a work or career setting, like anything specifically that maybe you've applied that type of mindset to and it's kind of paid off for you?
Yeah, I think a big one for me would be the public speaking. Over the past 2 years, I've done a lot of public speaking. I've been really lucky, actually. I've done Brighton SEO. I've been able to travel to Amsterdam, Copenhagen. I've done Prolific North, like lots of different opportunities to do talks and to get on stage in front of, at some point, hundreds of people.
Wow.
And I remember the first time that, well, I used to not even be able to speak in a client meeting. Like my voice my voice still shakes sometimes, but my voice used to really shake. I used to get so nervous just delivering a little bit of information. And the reason it did was because I was so worried that I'd get it wrong, or I was worried that people would laugh at me, or I was worried that I was going to mess up somehow. And I had that real fixed mindset with it.
Yeah.
So I've been really lucky in my career to be surrounded by some very supportive people who saw something in me that I probably didn't see in myself and really pushed me to keep going with it and keep trying. And I've done public speaking where I've failed. Like, I remember one talk I did, I had like lipstick all over my teeth. Like, I didn't realize till the end of it.
It happens to everyone.
And obviously no one can kind of tell you when you're on stage. So I was just
checking
like,
my teeth now as we're saying this, thinking, oh God, have I got something on my teeth?
I know, it was awful. And I've done one where, like, you know, stupid little things, like I've kind of like tripped when I've been on stage, and things that maybe a few years ago, if I'd done, I would be completely mortified and like never do it ever again. Be like, that's it, public speaking career's over. But with that growth mindset, like, you keep going and you keep trying and you keep getting better. And I think the last couple of talks that I've done this year have been the best that I've done because I've kept going with it. And I also know the next few talks that I do might not be the best again, but then I'll keep going and I'll keep improving with it. I think applying it to things like public speaking is a big thing. And when it comes to digital PR and people who maybe aren't, or just marketing in general, and people who aren't ready for that public speaking area yet, it's the confidence to even just speak up in internal meetings or client meetings, making sure that your voice is heard. The big thing, kind of what you were talking about before, about the perfectionism, I feel like also I was so worried about people's perception of me. And I was either worried that if I said something, I'd say something wrong and I'd come across stupid, or like, that's it really.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a really interesting point that you make about, it's not just particularly with something like public speaking or just like confidence in general, which is, I know, something that you're really passionate about. It's not always like got to be on a public stage in front of hundreds of people, although obviously that takes a lot of confidence. It can be very much speaking up in an internal meeting. It can be, you know, saying to a client that you're working with, you know, making a bit of a counter to what they're pushing for you to do, and you're saying, actually, no, I really think this is best, and having that belief in yourself that, no, I'm in this position for a reason, and having that confidence to speak up and stuff. So I know at connective3, everybody in the company, I think if they want it, can kind of have like confidence training, which I think is an amazing thing that, you know, to do as an organisation to support people's confidence internally. What would you say kind of from doing that are maybe some of the biggest barriers that people face when it comes to building up their confidence in the workplace?
I feel like there are 3 key barriers. So self-esteem is one of them. Worry and anxiety is another one. And then when it comes to public speaking or speaking in meetings, the stress response. So I'll go through each of them. So the first one, self-esteem. So 1/3 of young people have got low self-confidence coming from low self-esteem. And it's a really complex subject. It stems from your childhood and how people have perceived you and what people have spoken to you about. And it's a massive, massive issue. And it's tied into self-efficacy, which is your confidence in doing a certain task. So if you've made a cup of tea 1,000 times before, you're not going to have low confidence when you're making a cup of tea. You're just going to know how to do it. So self-efficacy comes from that. And then self-esteem comes from like a number of different factors. But what I try and do is teach people who I work with that you can have a high level of confidence and high self-efficacy and self-esteem going into situations where you've got 0 levels of experience.
Right.
So you can still feel like that because you can understand that you can fail. You don't have to worry about being judged, and that kind of like inherent confidence that you've got is really important. The worry and anxiety is a massive one in digital PR. Digital PR, it's all about links, you know, it's all about traffic, the bottom line, and it's what people are thinking about day to day. And if you're not hitting your targets, then you're going to be worried and you're going to be anxious. But there are things that you can train and things that you can do to stop you feeling like that. And good managers need to make sure they're stopping their staff from being stressed and anxious and worried. There's a difference between having a drive to do really well and sitting there stressing and worrying and not being able to do your job properly because of that. And they're 2 different things. And then the stress response. So public speaking, going up on stage, speaking to a client, even speaking to your boss, we naturally get a burst of adrenaline. So we'll get our fight or flight response that'll lead to your voice shaking, maybe your hand shaking a little bit, you're feeling a bit sick. Back in the day when we lived in the desert or whatever, we'd get that to like run away from a tiger, but you can't really run away when you're like faced with a client. I mean, as much as you want to run away, you can't really do it. So you kind of just have to like ride that out and like let that sail through. But all 3 of them are really complex and they're like tied into each other. And there are different ways of handling each one of them as well. Working on your self-esteem is a lifelong thing. It's not going to be a quick fix. And it's a really important thing. You need to and as a manager, it's a really important thing. So you need to stop yourself using self-deprecating language. Things like in a brainstorm going, oh, this might be really stupid, but, oh, these might be bad ideas. But you need to lead by example and not do that. And then you need to challenge your staff when they do that as well.
Right.
Things like overly apologizing for things, like all your staff are there for a reason and you've brought them on this meeting for a reason. Challenging that straight away helps with the negative thoughts that you have. If you notice that there are times when you're feeling negative about yourself and you're having these negative thoughts and behaviors, recognizing what your triggers are, writing that down.
Okay, that's interesting.
And seeing when it sets you off and trying to understand why that might be.
Yeah.
So is there a certain client that after every meeting with them, you just feel really like you've got low self-esteem, you feel really awful about it, and working out why that is. Is it the way they speak to you? Is it because you're worried about the results that you're getting? And trying to work back through that and understanding how to manage that is really important. But it's hugely complex, and those 2 things aren't gonna overnight work and change in your self-esteem, but there are actionable things that you can do and you can practice.
Yeah.
The worry and anxiety thing is a big one. So talking to people about it, talking about how you're feeling and why you're feeling it is so important. Trying to talk to your manager about it, but if you don't, so sometimes we have managers we maybe can't be that open with. Talking to a staff member or someone else about it and working through why that might be, and then problem solving with it. So what you're feeling in your head, writing down and seeing how you can solve that problem. And if you can, perfect, get those things in place. If you can't, you can't. Worry and anxiety is an interesting one because in the short term, it really makes us feel better because we feel like we're problem solving, but you just end up catastrophizing massively and thinking of the worst possible case scenario. Yeah. And then in your head, it's real and that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So trying to stop that as well is quite important.
That's so relatable and so useful to hear so many of those kind of tips of ways to deal with these things, because this is, I know obviously, you've mentioned that like kind of there are certain triggers, particularly working in a certain industry, that can maybe cause more worry and anxiety, particularly like you say in working in digital marketing, digital PR, very KPI driven. And sometimes those sorts of feelings are unavoidable, and like as you also said, sometimes they're not necessarily bad things and they can be used in a really positive way, but I think universally they're very kind of relatable feelings that at some point people will feel. I say at some point, at continual points throughout people's careers, because that's important to remember, right? That it's not just you'll experience all of these things in the early stages of your career. You become a manager, you'll get to senior leadership, and you'll never feel that ever again, and everything you do will be rosy, because it's just not the case. But kind of some of those really actionable things are interesting, and what you said about catastrophizing, so interesting, because I think reflecting on myself, I think that's something I definitely can be prone to doing, just allowing small worries to escalate to the point where I focus on the worst possible case scenario, and it's just like, why does my brain let me, like, why do I do that? It's awful.
It's so frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I remember, and this might sound a bit unrelated, but I remember speaking to my sister's fiance, and he is a really good guitarist. And he was playing one day and I was like, oh, you're really good at that. You must be like really naturally talented at that. And he was like, no, I practice all the time. Like I practice like hours and hours per day. Like I'm a musician. And I think it's the exact same with confidence. I feel like it seems like some people are just naturally born with it. And they might be a little bit more than others. But I wasn't, and I'm not. I definitely wasn't. And at the beginning of my career, I absolutely wasn't. And it wasn't really until I started considering the growth mindset and I was supported by some fantastic people throughout my career that I've really realized I'm not going to be able to do this naturally. It's going to have to be a lifelong journey, and I'm going to have to practice and practice at being confident. Yeah. Like forever.
It's a skill, isn't it, to train?
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that you say, some people probably are naturally kind of, gifted with a little bit more confidence than others. And it's probably true. But equally, I do think that we're all as individuals quite guilty of looking from an outside perspective at someone and automatically assuming that they are one of those people.
Yeah, and they've always been like that.
Yeah, and we don't know the background, the work that they've put in, the barriers that they've overcome to become how confident they are now. And, I think a lot of the time people equate extroverted people as being confident people, and that's not necessarily the same thing either. So it's really interesting, and I think a lot of people who you look up to and think, wow, aren't they so confident, I'd love to be like them, they've probably put in a lot of work as well to kind of get to where they are. But another kind of interesting question I wanted to ask, and just see whether you had any thoughts or anything, obviously from working with so many people, delivering sort of confidence training in the workplace, do you think there are any particular demographics within the workplace who tend to struggle with or kind of face, difficulties with their confidence more so than others that you've noticed?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I definitely think younger people, people starting out in their careers, and I'm sure kind of you were the same. I remember sat in a meeting in my first my first marketing job and hearing like these acronyms like PPC, SEO, and I remember being like, I have no idea what any of that means.
Scribbling them down to go and Google them later.
I had no clue, and I was too nervous to ask. And I should have just asked. And I think starting a new industry and going into a new job and being that younger person, it's very easy to have like really low levels of confidence in yourself. So it's definitely something I see more with younger staff members, which I think is normal because you've got less experience. I think probably I don't know if this is true across board, but in my experience, I see it a bit more with young women as well. Maybe not necessarily confidence, but not feeling like they've got a voice as much, or like a right to speak up as much. or worried about sounding stupid. That's something that I've seen a bit more in women than I have in men. And then people who are a little bit more introverted as well. I think marketing agencies are a really interesting mix of personalities, and you've got certain areas that attract certain types of people.
Yeah.
So I do think people who are in digital PR are 9 times out of 10 a little bit more extroverted. People who are more into maybe the analytical side of things are a little bit more introverted.
Yeah.
And being introverted by nature doesn't mean that you're not confident. It doesn't. Like, you can be a very introverted person, but very confident. You just know what you like and prefer not to be gregarious, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it's understanding that about the different types of personalities as well. And is someone an introvert or is someone struggling with the confidence? That's like a fine line, and it's a difficult thing for managers to deal with.
Definitely. And I think, like you say, if we are aware of the fact that a lot of the time younger people who are maybe, kind of starting out in their careers do struggle maybe with confidence or, around kind of not knowing terminology and whatever it might be, we've got to then acknowledge that, as managers, what can we do to make sure that we're making spaces that people are in as accommodating as possible, and, maybe just acknowledging that those might be some barriers that people face, and making it a safe and open space for people to ask questions, or, not making assumptions about kind of how much people know, and checking in and clarifying that people are comfortable with what you're doing and what you're talking about. And like you said, also, particularly for young women, but just I think women in general, that kind of, like you mentioned, that reluctance sometimes to speak up, or not feeling that they maybe have the right to speak up in a certain room, particularly sometimes if it's a room that's particularly dominated by kind of men and their voices. I think it's important not only as women managers, but men in senior leadership positions, kind of being a voice for those people, and making sure that we're making space for those people to have the opportunity to speak up. And if we notice that people, I guess, maybe don't seem like they're feeling as confident, or if that from a conversation you've had with someone before a meeting that they've got a really great idea, making sure you call on them and give them that space that maybe they wouldn't have the confidence to carve out for themselves in a room of people that they just don't feel that confident around, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's also really, really important for managers is to create a space where people aren't afraid to fail.
Yeah.
I think what I experienced a lot in my career, and this wasn't to do with any managers, I've had really great managers, was I was scared that if I did say something, or if I did speak up, or if I did have an idea, and then they used the idea and it failed, that it would all fall on me and everyone would think I was stupid. And creating that space where you can fail, but you fail fast and you learn from it is so important. And that means that your team will then become more confident, but they'll also take creative risks. They'll take creative risks with their campaigns, with their ideas, and it'll just take your team to the next level.
Yeah, it's how you get the best results, isn't it?
And it is difficult, and especially when things are so fast-paced and you've got so much pressure from clients. But you need to make sure that your team understands that if something goes wrong, you win as a team and you lose as a team. Like that's what happens. And that space to fail, I think, is so important. And seeing failure is not like a super negative word, and like a really, like, it's the end, like that's it. It's I've failed so many times, but each time I've made sure I've learned from it. I've really made sure that, okay, this didn't go how you wanted it to. This could have been 10 times better. So why was that? Why didn't it go? How could it have been better? And how are you going to make that better next time? And I think in digital PR, and I think everyone who's listening to this who has been in digital PR knows that you always have campaigns that are going to fail. Like, they just are. It's the nature of the game. And you learn from that, and you start putting those fail safes in to make sure that you won't do a campaign that's based around the World Cup, so you can only ever use it once every 4 years. It's a personal error of mine that I did last year.
Yeah.
Awful. But you learn, and you start, and you develop, and then you get to 10 years in and you still make really stupid mistakes sometimes, and then you just learn from them as well.
Yeah. And you learn so much more, and you grow so much faster through making mistakes and failing, staying in your comfort zone. But what's that cliche? I can't remember what it is. Like, you grow, it's something to do with growing more outside your comfort zone. And I feel like that is really definitely a thing.
Well, I've got some in the confidence training that I do. I probably won't get these exactly right. I probably will fail with these. But there's some stats, like 55% of Brits never ever leave their comfort zone.
Wow.
Ever. And I think 30-something% of people never try anything new. But like the really scary one was like 50% of people live in fear that they're one day going to regret that. I was like, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think encouraging people to try something new, like whatever it is, and stepping outside of that comfort zone is so important. Not in every industry necessarily, and not in day-to-day life. Like some people want to stay in that comfort zone, and that's fine. But if you are working with creatives, you need them to understand new ideas, understand new ways of thinking, think differently from others around them to be able to produce those amazing concepts that no one else has thought of. You need the openness to experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Well, just to kind of round up the episode then, because I feel like we've covered so much and it's been really useful in terms of tips and stuff. I guess to finish, do you have any, I guess, kind of nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to summarize, or maybe something you've not mentioned, or any resources, books or daily practices, or anything that our listeners could take away to kind of go and implement some of this to really build up their confidence themselves?
I think a really big one is challenging that self-deprecating language that you use. Like really trying hard not to do that. That made a real difference to me, I think, personally. And I've stopped using it as much now. And I mean, I probably used it in this podcast somehow, but I've stopped using it as much.
Yeah, definitely.
Is a really important one. Also, something that we've maybe not mentioned, which I think is really important, is empathy. So in terms of books, oh God, I don't really read nonfiction, if I'm honest. Like the occasional nonfiction book I have, and I know it works really well for some people.
Yeah.
But for me,
I'm not really a nonfiction person either, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it just I feel like some books are so samey and like are given the same message but in a slightly different way. Whereas I read fiction like nonstop all the time. And I think talking about that openness to experience and new creative ideas, understanding different people's mindsets and the experiences that different people have had, which I think you get through fiction, has been really great for me when it comes to creativity, and really good when it comes to confidence as well, and understanding other people's ideas. And that's really helped with management. So read all the time, whether that's fiction or nonfiction. Just read as much as you can. I think that's really important. Yeah. And if you're not a reader, then listen to podcasts, especially the Girls in Marketing podcast.
Oh, I love that little cheeky plug.
So read, challenge self-deprecating language. Also try and surround yourself as much as possible by people who are supportive. So important. Like your friends and your family. This is not, it doesn't happen like this for everyone, but if you can try and surround yourself by people who are your cheerleaders, push you to do better and challenge you, surround yourself by people who are smart. I think that's so important. Like, it's such a cheesy quote, but I really like the quote, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Yeah. Like, I think it's important to have people around you who are going to help you think critically about things and challenge you a little bit. And that helps with your confidence because you're in a safe space with your friends or your family, and you can discuss ideas and topics and take things to the next level. And try and be brave whenever you can, I think, is a good one. Yeah. I think bravery is, being brave is a word that we don't use really that much day to day. But I think every time that I've come across a difficult situation or a area where I've really had to be out of my comfort zone, just thought to myself, like, this is an opportunity and this is a time here for you to be brave. And that's really kind of helped push me through with it. And I think bravery is a really admirable quality in people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for that and joining me today on the podcast. It's been so lovely to have you with me.
I feel like I've hardly talked about marketing.
Do you know what? It's fine though. We've had a great chat. So.
Yeah, it's been really good. I feel like I rambled on. Look, I'm doing self-deprecating language now. I'm going to stop. No, it was really great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of the Girls in Marketing podcast. We love hearing from you, so if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review to let us know your thoughts, and make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button to be the first to hear when our new episodes released. Don't forget, if you want to get involved with Girls in Marketing, check out our membership to join our incredible community of marketers. Think marketing resources, courses, webinars, and more. Find out more on our website or drop us a message on any of our social channels @Girls in Marketing.